Welcome to another episode. Please like, share, subscribe, and also don't forget to leave a comment. Without further ado, let's dive in. After saying no to joining the European Economic Area in 1992, followed by its withdrawal in 2016 of an application for EU membership also made in 1992, Switzerland has focused on a bilateral path. Over the years, numerous cooperation treaties between the EU and Switzerland have been negotiated. But now the EU wants to pursue this bilateral path only if institutional questions are clarified in a framework agreement. Switzerland is not the only country that balks at the idea of joining the European Union. Iceland worries about fishing rights, Norway about its oil industry, and small Liechtenstein cannot imagine joining the EU without Switzerland. The situation in the Western Balkans is the opposite. North Macedonia has been trying to become an EU member for decades but has been constantly held back by its EU neighbors. No country finds it easy to balance competing interests, as a string of referendums on the EU held in different European countries since 1973 makes clear. Voters and politicians have had to weigh the economic and cultural advantages of close cross-border cooperation against concerns about a loss of sovereignty and individuality. The road taken by other European states which, like Switzerland, are not members of the EU offers plenty of valuable lessons. The key, according to the Icelandic Foreign Affairs Minister, is to stay focused on the ball because no one apart from ourselves will look after our interests. Britain managed to secure a trade pact with the EU in December 2020 that ensures exports and imports will not be subject to customs tariffs. But the deal doesn't encompass services, which account for about 80% of the British economy. All the same, the Brexit deal stirred some envy among the Swiss population. The Foreign Affairs Committee of the Swiss Senate asked the authorities to shed light on the advantages and disadvantages of the Brexit deal and to compare it with those of the framework agreement between Switzerland and the EU. The Federal Department of Foreign Affairs reached the conclusion that an agreement similar to the Brexit deal would be a clear step backwards for Switzerland. There was no other solution available to the British and certainly not the Swiss solution which, just like membership in the European Economic Area, requires a commitment to freedom of movement. A key motive for Brexit in Britain was limiting immigration. 10 years ago, the island state became embroiled in the global financial crisis. Almost overnight, the banking system in this nation of 350,000 people collapsed and the Icelandic currency depreciated dramatically. As a result of the crisis, the Icelandic government of the time submitted an application for EU membership to Brussels and negotiated for 3 years on an accession agreement. It became clear that different interests in fishing industry issues made membership in the EU impossible. For Icelandic Foreign Affairs Minister Gulager Ararsson, who is a member of the EU Skeptic Independence Party, the biggest advantage of not being an EU member is the freedom to determine trade policy independently. In our case, almost 90% of our entire international trade is customs-free, while in the EU's case, it's just 27%. Iceland has belonged to the European Economic Area since 1994, and that, Rarsson says, has served it well. If I had to choose between leaving the EA and EU membership, I wouldn't know how to answer, said the minister. With a territory of 160 square kilometers and fewer than 40,000 inhabitants, Liechtenstein is one of the smallest countries in the world. The country is closely linked to Switzerland. Since the 1920s, the principality has been part of the Swiss customs and economic area and uses Swiss francs as its currency. At the same time, the microstate has also had good relations with the EU. Since the 1990s, Liechtenstein has been part of the EEA. Joining the EU is not, however, up for debate in Liechtenstein. Most politicians see no sense in EU membership given the size of the country, said Christian Frommelt, a director and researcher in politics at the Liechtenstein Institute. This is particularly true of any accession that would take place without Switzerland. Given the close links between the two, it is unrealistic to envisage Liechtenstein joining the EU without Switzerland, he said. Thanks to its EEA membership, Liechtenstein is more integrated in the EU than Switzerland. The EEA covers more areas of policy than the planned framework agreement. It regulates, among other things, financial services and the energy market. With the help of a special clause, Liechtenstein managed to retain discretionary powers to control immigration. As a small state, Liechtenstein has accepted that it cannot be fully sovereign. Despite Liechtenstein's fast adoption of EU law and dwindling scope to control some areas of regulation, I see EEA membership as a strengthening of Liechtenstein's sovereignty, said Frommelt. Through its EEA membership, Liechtenstein has, for example, managed to reduce its reliance on Switzerland. As the biggest oil exporter in Europe, Norway is one of the richest countries in the world. Economically and culturally, the Kingdom of Norway, independent from Sweden since 1905, has shared close ties with Europe and twice tried to join the EU as a full member, in 1972 and 1994. Both times, a majority of the 5 million Norwegians rejected membership for fear of losing their independence. Like Iceland and Liechtenstein, Norway chose to join the EEA in the 1990s as a third option. This path of integration has, on the whole, proven worthwhile, according to the Norwegian expert on Europe, Kate Hansenbund. A large majority of Norwegians and most political parties support the EEA today, even if it does commit us to taking on new EU regulations without having a say in them. According to Hansenbund, the EEA is, for these reasons, a suboptimal integration solution with a large democracy deficit. Her country has, however, learned to live with that. She said there is no popular majority for EU membership or for leaving the EEA. That is unlikely to change in parliamentary elections this year, she added. In both possible coalitions, the current center-right government and the red-green opposition camp, proponents of full membership and advocates for leaving the EEA are about equal. There is currently no alternative to staying in the EEA, which was once marketed by the former Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland as an emergency solution. It is estimated that around 12% of the popular vote in Switzerland could not even occur if the country were a member of the bloc subordinated to European law. Moreover, that same direct democracy that alienated the nation from the European community in the 1990s makes the current situation even worse, as less than 20% of the Swiss population supports EU membership. This way, the majority of the Swiss electorate and cards would have to agree to join the European Union, something that would be very difficult at the current juncture. Another point worth mentioning is that Switzerland does not have the same motivations that make most countries join the European Union. France and Germany, for example, are major global players in world geopolitics and therefore increase their influence within the bloc. In some cases, there is a concern for security, something guaranteed in the Article 42 clause, which requires other EU countries to support and assist a member state under armed attack. In other cases, there is a desire for greater political stability and economic development where, according to estimates, the average European citizen is around €950 richer per year due to the European single market. However, these factors do not encourage Switzerland to join, as it is one of the most politically stable and prosperous countries in the world and has no ambitions to become a protagonist on the international scene. Thanks for watching and see you again in another episode.